guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, then welcome. My name is Maddie, and today I'll be talking about books that I used to love, but I don't really like as much anymore. This is a topic that I just came up with when I was thinking of what to film today, and it's one that I hadn't ever thought of filming anytime soon, but then I was like, this is such a good topic because I have quite a few books that I used to love but have kind of changed my mind about. Not to say that I hate these books now. I don't think I could ever hate a book that I once loved. I just don't feel as excited about these books anymore now that time has passed, or I have found books that are even better than these ones, that it kind of makes me not love the book as much as I used to. I read some of these books when I was really young, and obviously when you are young, you don't pick out kind of how problematic a book could be. And some of these books are problematic, but I didn't realize that when I was younger, so I don't love them as much anymore because of that. Others, I've just kind of grown out of love of them. So, with that out of the way, let's just get into my list of books that I don't love as much anymore. The first one I have is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. Now, I read this book in 2016. This was my favorite book of 2016. I read this book and loved it. I loved it so much. And after rereading this book 2 times after the first time I read it, I found that the most recent time that I reread this book, I didn't really love it as much anymore. And one of the reasons is since I have read so many other fantasy books, after reading Red Queen, I've realized how unoriginal Red Queen is. The plot of it is very generic fantasy that I feel like if I had read Red Queen now, I would have never given it as much as a high rating as I did when I first read it. It probably would have been like a 3-star. So because of that, I don't love this book as much anymore. I do like it though. However, Book 2, Glass Sword, was a huge disappointment, and for that reason I chose not to continue on with this series because I don't care anymore. I've thought about it so many times, but I just am not interested enough to continue on with this series when I found the second book so disappointing, and I've tried to read the third book but couldn't get through it, so probably not going to finish this one, but I will still hold a special place in my heart for Red Queen because I do remember loving it so much. Just not anymore because it's really not that original. It's a very generic fantasy book. The next one I have is a book that used to be my favorite book of all time. That is Every Day by David Levithan. So when I first started my booktube channel, whenever I would bring up this book, I would say this is my favorite book of all time. Like, I loved this book. I first read this book when I was 16, I think, so it was a long time ago, and as I mentioned, when I was younger, I did not see a lot of problematic things that were in books. I would just think like it wasn't a big deal, or I wouldn't even notice it. But now, after rereading this book last year, I noticed some things that are pretty problematic about it. So, if you do not know, this is a book about this person who switches bodies every day. He's never the same person every day. He's not even a person, he's just a soul because he's never in the same body. So one day he transfers into the body of this girl's boyfriend, and during that day he grows interest in the girl, but he can never see her again because he is in a different body every single day. So he tries to make his way back to her and to see her again. So it's all about their love story, and I remember the romance being really cute. I still really like the romance. What I have a problem with, there's one day that he is in the body of an overweight guy, and before this had happened, the girl who he's in love with, which is Rhiannon, had never had a problem with any of the other bodies he had been in, but when he gets into the body of a fat person, she has a problem with it. You kind of see the problem right there. She didn't have a problem with any of the other people's bodies he had been in, but when it comes to her seeing him as a fat person, she questions if she should be with him. That's, oh, I remember that part in when I first read this book, but I didn't really think much of it for some reason. I just didn't care. But now after rereading it, I'm like, oh, this is bad. Oh, you should not have put that in the book. I am glad, though, that they didn't have that part in the movie, because if they have had that in a movie, I would have been kind of mad, because I'm like, that's a part you should leave out. But fortunately, they left that part out of the movie. But yeah, that's a part where I was like, and it kind of made me question Rhiannon as a character, because she claims not to care what body that this guy, this soul who changes bodies every day is in, but when he's in the body of a fat person, that's when she has a problem. That is really problematic. I don't like fat shaming at all. As someone who is overweight, I hate fat shaming. So that part made me like this book a little less, but I still love this book. I feel like I will always love this book since it meant so much to me at one time. However, I do think now it would be like a 4-star book just because of that part. But I still love it. Would still recommend it. It's great. The next one is a book that I think so many people could add to this list. So many people have the same view on it, and I am one of them. That is Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. Oh boy. I read this book in 6th grade when I was 12 years old. So I read this book when I was young. This is like one of the first books I had ever read outside of school reading. And I always liked Twilight, but I wasn't like a huge fan like other people were. I was just someone who liked it. I read all the books, but I never saw a problem with the relationship in it. I always thought Edward and Bella's relationship was so romantic and they were like so perfect. But after rereading this book in 2017, so not too long ago, I found so many problems with this relationship because it is so toxic. Oh my god, I found that I really didn't like Edward at all. I don't know why I liked him when I was younger. He's so controlling. He never lets Bella make her own decisions. He's like the ultimate alpha male, and it's so annoying. Like, why did I ever think they were perfect for each other? Like, Bella deserves so much better, even though she's such, like, a bland character that I shouldn't care for her as much. But, like, man, their relationship is just so toxic. And when I was younger, I just thought it was so romantic. But, like, now I'm like, I've read so many relationships and books like this that I absolutely hate. And to think that I, at one point, loved a toxic relationship, even when I was younger, just like boggles my mind. So yeah, I don't love this book nearly as much as I did when I was younger. It's probably like, I think when I reread it, I gave it a 4 stars just because it's hard to rate this book any lower because of the nostalgia. But yeah, this book, really problematic, and I didn't see that when I was younger. But then again, like I said, when you're younger, toxic relationships, you don't think of them as toxic relationships, and that is the problem with toxic, abusive relationships in young adult books. That's why I have a problem with them, because young people don't tend to really understand how abuse is a bad thing. It's because young adult books kind of usually glorify or romanticize abusive relationships, and I fell for that. So yeah, this one, I don't love it as much anymore because of the relationship. But, I mean, I'll always have a special place for this one just because of the nostalgia. This next one is a book that I didn't read when I was a teenager, as opposed to some of the books that I have been mentioning. I read this book when I was 19. No, I was 19. And it was my favorite book of 2018. But I kind of have different feelings for it now. And that is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Still one of my favorite books. However, not my favorite book of all time anymore. I think a lot of people have similar feelings for the first book after the second book came out, because come to find out that this couple in this book is not right for each other at all. Because the guy becomes super controlling and he is awful to the main character, Feyre. He treats her like crap. Mainly, though, in the second book. In the first book, he doesn't mistreat her in a way. And that's what I really want to get at. So, I've read this book, I think, 4 times, and I'll probably always reread it. I mean, I love this book. Still do. But come to find out that I've noticed how toxic this relationship is in this book. Tamlin isn't as great as I thought he was when I first read this book. I found some of the things he did to Feyre to be very questionable, especially when it came to things like sexual assault. That was kind of hinted at, that I found pretty problematic, and that's another thing that a lot of people don't like about this book. Like, the main thing is that there was kind of a sexual assault theme, or like a molestation scene in it, that a lot of people did not like, and now I can understand why a lot of people don't like A Court of Thorns and Roses, because I could understand how that scene could come off as offensive. I didn't think much of it when I first read this book, but after rereading it, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of not okay at all. And with Feyre and Tamlin's relationship entirely, I don't give a crap about them anymore. When I first read this book, they were like my favorite couple of all time. Like, I loved them, but now it hurts to read this book because I hate them together so much. Like, I honestly don't know if I can ever reread this book again, because every time I've reread this book, I found myself just totally disinterested in their romance because of the things that Tamlin has done to Feyre. Kind of ruined this book for me. Like, the books that came after this book has ruined this book for me because of how terrible Tamlin is. So that's kind of unfortunate, but I mean, it's still a great book. I still think it's just so whimsical, and just the plot of it is just so enthralling and captivating. Still love it, just not as much anymore. Mainly all because of Tamlin. Oh, I used to love Tamlin. Any of you guys who have read this book, the first time you read this book, before reading the sequels, did you love Tamlin as much as I did? Because now I just feel like a fool. I hope I wasn't the only one, but I don't think I was, because I think a lot of people did like Tamlin, but now it's just like everyone like wants to burn him with fire. It's kind of funny. Moving on to another Sarah J. Maas book. That's Throne of Glass. So with Throne of Glass, I just liked this book. I thought it was good. I wasn't ever like a huge fan, but now thinking about it, I don't like it as much as I thought I did. It was just a book that was just, after I think about it, there's not a lot of things I remember about it, so it's really not that memorable. And as I've gone on with the series, I've become so much less interested in the books that I have decided to just DNF this series. I don't know if I will ever continue. It's something that I'm always pondering. Am I going to continue with this series? But I'm just, at least for now, right now, I'm not interested enough. Based on the fact that pretty much the books that I have read in this series have just been fine. But I did remember really liking the first book, but now that I think about it, I don't like it as much anymore because it's so forgettable. And I just don't care about the series anymore, sadly. So yeah, this book wasn't as great as I thought it was when I read this book in 2016, so I was about like 20, but I still don't really care about this series anymore, and sadly we'll probably not get back into this series again because I've lost interest. This next one is a book that I just reread last month, and upon reread, came to find out I don't like this book as much as I used to. And that is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. So I first read The Hunger Games when I was in middle school. I was about 13. So I was little when I read this book. And I remember The Hunger Games being like the best book I'd ever read. I was obsessed with The Hunger Games. I was involved in the fandom. I had The Hunger Games posters in my room. I was so excited for the movies. I remember every day leading up to the first release of the movie, I would go online just to look up updates on the movie. That's how obsessed I was with The Hunger Games. I mean, mega obsessed. And upon reread, I come to find out I don't love this book as much as I did when I was a teen. And I think that's kind of was expected because I've read so many books since I was a teenager, so many, that I've found a lot of books that are better than The Hunger Games. And one reason I don't love the Hunger Games as much anymore is that I've grown tired of the trope of the chosen one. It's just a trope that is just so generic. I don't like reading about heroines who are like the one character who can save the world, who is like the one person who's going to revolutionize the world. And when I was reading this series again, I found myself just so bored by that trope because it's a trope that's used so much, and it's like the biggest thing of the Hunger Games is the chosen one trope, and it's just one trope that I just don't care about anymore. So for that reason, I wasn't as into the Hunger Games as I was when I was a kid, which is disappointing, but I mean, I kind of expected it. However, I will always treasure these books. They are the books that, one of the books series that got me into reading. I love them. I always will. I will always have the same feelings for it like I had with Twilight. I'll always have that nostalgic feeling because at one point in my life, these books meant so much to me. And the last book I'm going to talk about is Looking for Alaska by John Green. So I read this book when I was 15 or 16. I think I was 15, so it was quite a while ago. And I loved this book so much. I loved it. I had read The Fault in Our Stars before reading this book, and I loved this book way more than The Fault in Our Stars, when The Fault in Our Stars is John Green's most popular book. But I was obsessed with Looking for Alaska. However, now I reread this book in 2017, so it was a while ago. But when I reread it, I noticed some things that were pretty toxic about it. So this is another book where I found things that are problematic that I didn't find when I was younger. So I think the message of this book is great. The whole message of this book is being adventurous and growing up and how hard it can be to grow up, but like change is good. And you should just live life to the fullest. That is a great theme. But some of the ways that this book promotes this theme is by drinking, smoking, doing drugs, because the main character, it's all about him going to a boarding school and getting involved with kind of the wrong crowd. He gets involved with kids who do bad things, when in his home life he was someone who was a pretty good kid, pretty innocent, always followed the rules. But when he goes to this new school, he gets involved with people who kind of change him. And I feel like this book kind of promotes drinking and underage and smoking, and when I realized that, I was like, ooh, this book is more problematic than I thought it was. So yeah, I don't think this book sends a great message to young people anymore. In a way it does, because it's a book about, you know, accepting change and accepting the fact that you're growing up, and I think that's a great theme. But I don't think it's a good message to send to young kids that change involves smoking and drinking. And that's something I realize now. However, like with all these other books, I still love this book. I love the main character a lot because he is really brave in how he tries to accept change, and he tries to accept that he's growing up. I think that's something that so many teenagers go through, is growing up. So when I was a teen, I related to him so much. But I can't ignore the problematic things in this book anymore, sadly. But it's still a great book, still my favorite John Green book of all time. So those were the books that I used to love, but I don't as much anymore. And along with that, the reason why I don't love these books as much anymore is that I've read so many books since reading these books that I've found so many books that I love even more than these ones. And that's just the way it is. Like, I feel like I'll always have my favorite book at one point, but eventually there will be a book that surpasses that. That has yet to happen with The Problem with Forever, though. I mean, I'm still waiting for the book that's going to surpass my love for The Problem with Forever, since right now this is my favorite book of all time. And I honestly, I don't know when that's ever going to happen, because this book still means the absolute world to me. Maybe it'll happen, but it's going to take a lot, because I love this book so much. But we'll see. We'll see if this book gets on this list someday of books I used to love but don't anymore. I honestly don't think it'll happen, because that's how much I love this book. Let me know in the comments if you have any books that you used to love but don't anymore. Like, is there any books from your childhood that you loved but you now see that there's problematic things with it, or do you just not love it as much anymore because you've read so many other great books since then? Like, let me know. I'd be curious. I'm sure a lot of us can agree that Twilight, we used to love it, but now we recognize how problematic it is. I know I'm not the only person with that opinion. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below for more bookish related videos. I upload 2 to 3 times a week, and I'll be back really soon. Bye!